What if I told you a donkey, yes, a donkey, may have just saved the life of a sitting president? This isn't a joke or a fairy tale. It's a real event that unfolded deep in the heart of Africa, where an assassination plot was moments away from success, until one stubborn animal changed everything. Stick around, because this story will blow your mind. Before we dive into the unbelievable story of the donkey that may have saved a president's life, let's take a moment to understand who Ibrahim Traoré really is, and why so many people either support him fiercely or fear what he stands for. In a world where most national leaders are well into their 50s, 60s, or even older, Ibrahim Traoré broke the mold. At just 34 years old, he became the youngest head of state in Africa and one of the youngest leaders on the entire planet. But this wasn't a peaceful transition through elections. Traoré came to power through a military coup in September 2022, when he overthrew interim President Paul-Henri Damiba, who had himself come to power through a coup just months earlier. Traoré, a captain in the Burkina military, wasn't just ambitious, he was angry. Angry at the way his country was being run. Angry at how terrorism was spreading across the north and east of Burkina Faso. Angry at how foreign interests seemed to be pulling strings behind the scenes, while everyday people suffered. And that anger resonated with the people. As soon as Traoré took charge, crowds filled the streets not in protest, but in celebration. Young people waved flags. Women cheered. For the first time in years, many felt a renewed sense of hope. Here was a leader who looked like them, spoke plainly, and promised to put Burkina Faso first. But not everyone was thrilled. Traoré quickly began making bold moves. He cut ties with France, the former colonial power, and ordered all French troops to leave the country. He began to look toward Russia and other non-Western allies for military and economic support. Some hailed this as a long overdue act of independence. Others saw it as dangerously provocative. Inside the government and military, Traoré shook things up. Corrupt officials were quietly removed. New, younger officers were promoted. Special operations were launched against armed terrorist groups in rural regions, sometimes with brutal force. The result? He gained a reputation as a warrior president, someone not afraid to get his hands dirty. But that also meant he was stepping on powerful toes, military elites, foreign partners, and even hidden figures within his own administration who preferred the old system of control and quiet deals. To his supporters, Traoré is a patriot, a brave leader fighting for sovereignty and national pride. To his critics, he's a reckless populist, risking stability and international relationships to win applause. But one thing is clear. Ibrahim Traoré is not an ordinary leader. He's a man on a mission, and his leadership has made him both a symbol of hope and a high-profile target. And it was this growing tension between change and resistance, between bold leadership and hidden enemies, that would set the stage for one of the strangest events in modern political history. A donkey, a convoy, and an assassination plot that didn't go as planned. By early 2025, the atmosphere in Burkina Faso was tense, boiling just beneath the surface. While President Ibrahim Traoré was praised publicly for his strong anti-terrorism stance and swift action against corruption, behind the scenes, dangerous forces were beginning to move. Whispers turned into murmurs and murmurs into warnings. Within military circles, among high-ranking officials, and even in some political offices, there were growing signs of discontent. Traoré's reforms had been sweeping and fast. He had exposed corrupt networks, cut off shady foreign deals, and reorganized power structures that had existed for decades. For the common people, these moves were refreshing, a sign that someone was finally taking action. But for those who benefited from the old system, Traoré was not a hero. He was a threat. It started with subtle signs: increased surveillance on his movements, intercepted messages, unusual behavior among certain commanders. Intelligence officers working closely with the president began to pick up disturbing chatter, coded messages, anonymous tips, and even signs that funds were being moved in preparation for something big. Then came the leak that confirmed their worst fears. A secret meeting had taken place, right in the heart of the capital, Ouagadougou. The attendees weren't rebels or outsiders. They were insiders, influential figures with ties to both military and political sectors. Some had smiled in Traoré's presence, Some had even saluted him. And yet, they were allegedly plotting to remove him, permanently. The plan was as bold as it was chilling. Traore had announced a surprise visit to a remote village near the eastern border, a region recently stabilized after years of unrest. The trip was meant to be symbolic, an opportunity to meet local leaders, boost morale among the troops, and show the public that peace was returning to the countryside. But that announcement, which was supposed to stay confidential, had somehow been leaked. The conspirators saw their chance. The narrow, isolated road leading into the village was perfect for an ambush, far from cameras, far from reinforcements. According to the leaked intel, the assassins planned to strike just as the convoy entered a tight bend near a wooded area. Explosives would block the rear, gunmen would trap the front, and the president would be caught in the middle. A clean hit. No witnesses. But what they didn't count on was a donkey. Yes, it sounds unbelievable, but what happened next would leave military analysts, journalists, and even the conspirators themselves stunned. Just minutes before the convoy reached the danger zone, something strange interrupted the schedule. A donkey, yes, an actual donkey, wandered onto the dirt road. It stood directly in the path of the lead vehicle and refused to move. It kicked, brayed, and caused enough of a delay to force the entire motorcade to stop for nearly 15 minutes. That delay would change everything. Unbeknownst to the conspirators, this disruption was enough for drone operators and bodyguards to notice suspicious activity ahead. The ambush team, realizing their timing had been blown, panicked and scattered before the convoy arrived. The attack was avoided by a matter of minutes, and the entire assassination plot was exposed shortly after. And it all began unraveling because of a donkey. It was supposed to be a routine outreach visit. President Ibrahim Traoré, known for personally engaging with rural communities, had planned a surprise stop in a quiet eastern village. The location was considered safe, an area recently cleared of terrorist threats, surrounded by nothing but fields, trees, and small farming settlements. As his armored convoy rolled down a narrow dirt road flanked by tall, whispering grass and scattered trees, everything appeared calm. Birds chirped. Farmers waved from a distance. Local children peeked from behind mud huts, hoping to catch a glimpse of the president. But then, something completely unexpected happened. From the left side of the road, a donkey wandered out of the brush and stepped directly in front of the lead vehicle. At first, the security team assumed it would move on its own, as animals often do when startled by engines or shouting. But this donkey was no ordinary animal. It stood its ground stubbornly, staring down the large black SUV with almost eerie confidence. When guards shouted and approached it, the donkey brayed loudly, stomped its hooves, and even kicked the front bumper of one of the vehicles. Any attempt to force it off the road only made it more agitated. The entire convoy came to a complete standstill. What started as a small inconvenience quickly escalated into a 15-minute delay, as security personnel scrambled to clear the path without alarming the president or the local villagers. No one understood why the animal was behaving so strangely, but soon, its actions would prove to be life-saving. Just 500 meters ahead, hidden behind a curve in the road in thick brush, a team of armed men waited in silence. Their plan was cold and precise. They knew the convoy's estimated arrival time to the second. Explosives were buried along the route, ready to isolate the vehicles. Gunmen were stationed in tree cover and high grass. A digital timer and radio communicator were prepared for the signal. Timing was everything. But as the minutes ticked by and the convoy failed to arrive, the ambush team grew increasingly uneasy. One of their scouts, stationed at a nearby hill, noticed something alarming: increased drone activity overhead, a sign that the presidential security forces were adjusting their surveillance, likely suspicious of the delay. The commander of the ambush team panicked. With no visual on the convoy and drone eyes circling above, the operation was abruptly called off. The attackers scattered into the trees, leaving behind gear in their haste. Later, when the convoy safely passed through the area, military intelligence launched a full sweep. What they discovered shocked everyone: rifles, tactical gear, encrypted radios, and even printed documents outlining the convoy's route and precise timing. Had the donkey not intervened, President Traore would have driven straight into an ambush. Investigators couldn't explain the animal's behavior. Some suggested it sensed buried explosives. Others called it fate. But one thing was certain: that donkey saved the president's life. From that moment, the humble creature became more than just a roadside nuisance. It became a national symbol of survival. In the days following the failed ambush attempt, Burkina Faso's military intelligence sprang into action. What had seemed like a strange animal encounter quickly turned into the unraveling of one of the most dangerous assassination plots the country had ever faced. A thorough investigation was launched immediately. Troops secured the area, drones scanned for retreating suspects, and sniffer dogs were brought into search for hidden devices or evidence. What investigators found sent shockwaves through the government. Inside an abandoned hut nearby, they discovered encrypted radios, tactical maps, written attack plans, and, most chilling of all, messages exchanged between the conspirators. These weren't just low-level rebels or outsiders. Some of the names uncovered were deep within the government and military ranks. A few were individuals who had stood beside President Traore in official meetings, saluted him during parades, and spoken publicly in support of his leadership. Now, they were being exposed as traitors. As the intelligence team combed through security footage, drone logs, and convoy data, one detail stood out more than any other: the exact timing of the donkey's appearance. The animal entered the road at precisely the moment the convoy would have reached the ambush zone had there been no interruption. Experts analyzed the footage over and over again. Some believed the donkey might have been startled by underground explosives or sensed the tension ahead. Others pointed to animal instinct, how animals can often detect danger long before humans do. A few whispered that it wasn't just instinct, maybe it was divine intervention. The question on everyone's mind was simple: could this donkey have known? Whatever the explanation, the results were undeniable. That 15-minute delay disrupted a carefully coordinated plan and bought enough time for surveillance to detect suspicious activity. The convoy was rerouted moments before the trap, and the president's life was saved. News of the incident spread rapidly, first through military circles and then into the public. By the end of the week, it was all over social media. Memes, cartoons, songs, and radio shows exploded with coverage of Le Hero's Pats, the four-legged hero. The donkey, still wandering around the village after the incident, was taken in by local farmers. When villagers learned what had happened, they treated the animal like royalty. It was washed, fed, and even adorned with ribbons and painted symbols of national pride. Soon after, the government released an official statement confirming the assassination plot and indirectly acknowledging the donkey's role in disrupting it. While the military avoided using words like hero, the people didn't hold back. They called the donkey sauveteur, meaning the rescuer. It didn't take long before people began calling for the animal to be brought to the capital. Rumors began circulating that the donkey might even be given an honorary medal, or at least a secure home in the presidential estate. Whether by chance, instinct, or something greater, one thing was certain: this simple donkey had unknowingly saved the life of a president and became a legend in the process. In the days that followed, the story of the donkey that saved the president swept across Burkina Faso like wildfire. What started as whispers among villagers and military personnel quickly turned into a national sensation. News outlets across Africa picked up the bizarre but incredible tale. On social media, the donkey became a viral icon. Memes, video animations, and even music tracks flooded platforms like TikTok and Facebook. One video remix of the donkey braying was turned into a catchy beat that played on local radio stations for weeks. Soon, children's authors began writing colorful picture books inspired by the event. One title, The Brave Donkey of Burkina, became an instant hit in primary schools, using the story to teach kids about courage, destiny, and how small acts can lead to big outcomes. And then came the moment that sealed the donkey's place in national legend. During a televised public speech, just weeks after the attempted ambush, President Ibrahim Traoré himself addressed the incident. With a slight smile and a twinkle in his eye, he looked out at the crowd and said, "I'm not sure what angels look like, but maybe sometimes they walk on four legs. Maybe I should take that donkey to the palace." The crowd roared with laughter and applause. In that single line, Traore did more than just tell a joke. He captured the spirit of a nation looking for something to believe in. For a country exhausted by political turmoil, terrorism, and economic hardship, this strange twist of fate gave people something rare, a reason to smile. But beyond the humor and headlines, there was a deeper message that resonated with millions. Even in the darkest of times, hope can come from the most unexpected places. In this case, it didn't come from diplomats or generals. It came from a stubborn, braying donkey on a dusty road in rural Burkina Faso. The political climate remains intense. President Traore continues to navigate a minefield of reform, resistance, and national security threats. Enemies still lurk, and the fight for Burkina Faso's future is far from over. But this one strange, powerful moment reminded the nation, and the world, that life is unpredictable. That sometimes, destiny steps in through the most humble of messengers. In a quiet village, that donkey now lives peacefully, watched over by locals who treat it like a legend. Some have even nicknamed it Petit President, the Little President. Whether you believe it was fate, animal instinct, or divine intervention, one fact remains: one donkey, one delay, one saved life. And in that moment, history changed, not with weapons or speeches, but with hooves, brays, and perfect timing. If you enjoyed this incredible story of the donkey that saved the president, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more unbelievable true stories from around the world. And don't forget to hit the notification bell, so you never miss a moment of the unexpected. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes history is written in the most surprising ways.